So in that case, what we're going to do is I am going to start on the library's website, library.mtsu.edu. And there are different ways to approach finding information sources. In this case, based on what we are doing for Project 2, and I know you've already done a little bit of work, right, with your research question, I am going to use Joule Search. So who has used Joule Search before to look for content? Okay, a few people. There's a reason we put it right here on the search box on the home page. So what Joule Search does is it is a tool that looks at many of the different information databases that we have access to in the library. Now, a database, just one database by itself, might tell us about newspaper articles, or it might tell us about scholarly articles in a particular field or discipline. We have databases that give us streaming video. Canopy is an example of that. Or we have databases of scanned historical documents and primary sources. Joule, plus the database that tells us about the books and the videos and the music that we have here, hard copy in the building. Okay, so Joule Search looks at all of those, not all of them, but many of those databases at once. And that's why we say that it can be a nice place to discover all kinds of content from a variety of resources, books, ebooks, articles, media, course reserves. So course reserves would be material here in the library for your particular class. And when we say articles, then we might mean articles in a newspaper, articles in a popular magazine, or in this case for us, articles in an academic or a scholarly journal. I'll also just point out that the scholarly articles tab on the home page is a subset of Joule Search, but we have pre-selected the limiters that hone in just on scholarly articles. You can apply those limiters on your own. And so I'll be honest, I actually don't ever even use the scholarly articles tab because I kind of forget about it. I just start right with Joule Search. And then here's the next thing I do. We can type something and hit search. I go ahead and hit advanced search. And so here is why. Because with advanced search, I get these multiple search boxes. And so if I have, if I have a research question that I'm looking at that involves more than one or two keywords, or I'm combining a couple of ideas, then this lets me do that in a very organized fashion. Google is really good about you can just type in your question, right? The same way you would ask me, how does consumer behavior affect climate change? And you get great answers, right? Library databases don't always handle what we call that natural language super well. And so that question that I just asked you, how does consumer behavior affect climate change? Then here, I could take those keywords that I just mentioned. What are the keywords I just mentioned in that sentence? Okay, so consumer. Do you hear anything else that sounded like a keyword? How does consumer behavior affect climate change? Climate change, right? Okay, yeah, don't overthink that. And I could say consumer or consumer behavior, and then I probably would also be thinking about other ways to describe consumer behavior. So then with those multiple search boxes, I can divide up my ideas. Okay, so that's where I'm going to start. I'm actually not going to look for that right now. Doom scrolling. And then as I start typing, they are going to type, these are other searches that people have performed as well in the past. So doom scrolling and mental health. Oh, okay, here's one, doom scrolling or, and they divided the two terms. And different databases might handle that better than others. We'll see. Doom scrolling dangers. I'm just going to start kind of broad. So even if I already have another idea kind of about where I want to narrow this, I'm going to start kind of broad and I'll show you why. So I'm going to go ahead and hit search. I have some limiters that I can start applying. I usually do them after the fact, and here's why. So I'm going to hit search, and then I will know what my universe is. So by my universe, I mean that with that search that I put in, Joule Search brought me back 1,196 things. So I know now that's my universe. So now if I start applying what they call filters, and I wrote filters up on the whiteboard, then I know if I start applying filters, my 1,196 results are only going to get smaller. So if I had done a search and then ended up with 10 results, then again, that's a small universe, right? Now I may be fine with that, or I may want to try some different key terms. It may be that I'm researching just a very narrow topic there where there really isn't a lot written. The first couple of things that I'm going to do in this case, the first one is, and I'm always going to do this, I am going to log in. And what I mean by that is in the upper right-hand corner, and I wrote log in on the whiteboard, in the upper right-hand corner, I have this link that says My EBSCO. EBSCO is just the company that gives us Joule Search. Okay, when I hover over this in the upper right, then it says sign in. Sign in, and then it should seamlessly or not, depending on whether I've already authenticated. It will have me sign into single sign-on. And does anybody know why I'm interested in logging in to my EBSCO? What this will do for me? Yes. So logging in will let me save items or searches for later. So now I'm logged in. Okay, now when I click on my EBSCO, it tells me I'm logged in. So that then I can save items that I find, either save specific results for later or save an entire search. Now, this is I can only save in here what I do in Joule Search or in another database that comes to us from that same company. But it's better than nothing. And then I always have the option, of course, to email things to myself, to save them to a Google Drive or to OneDrive or to my hard drive. So now I'm logged in. Now for us, we're going to pretend I've already done some exploring of my topic, and I assume you have, because you guys have all written research questions, right? Okay. Because this may not be the great place to explore a topic. I'm probably going to start just with a Google search, scrolling, and just see what people are saying and talking about it, regardless of that, who it is that's talking about it. Okay, but now that I'm here, I know then that in these filters across the top, I have a few things I want to focus on. So first, scholarly, peer-reviewed, academic. They are using those terms as synonyms. What is peer review? What happens to an article that's peer-reviewed? So there are, in our list of 1,000 plus articles, there are articles that are tagged as peer-reviewed. And synonyms for a peer-reviewed article: a scholarly journal article, an academic article. Are there any nursing majors in our class? Okay, the nursing profession talks about refereed articles. Those are all synonyms for the process of a manuscript, before it is published in a journal, is reviewed by peers of the author. And that process then, hopefully, for us as readers, increases the authenticity, the value of the articles, because these are, so say, well, in my case, I'm a library professor, I write a manuscript and turn it into a library science journal. Other librarians who have had the same schooling and experiences that I have are going to review that article. They're going to ask questions. They're going to say, hey, did you think about this? Or, oh, well, so-and-so did a bunch of research on this and you don't even mention so-and-so in your article. And so then I will have, hopefully, the opportunity to revise my manuscript to respond to those questions. And that then, for us as readers, increases the reliability, the accuracy, we hope, of the article. That's a specific process that happens, and there are different ways that it happens, and we don't need to worry about that. But generally speaking, if we're told in an assignment that we need to use an academic or a scholarly article, this is what we mean. So not a magazine from Sports Illustrated, not even a magazine like, I'm making one up, Dental World. So who do you think, I'm making up that magazine, but who do you think probably would be the ideal audience for Dental World magazine? Like, what do those people do for a living? They're dentists, right? And maybe dental aficionados, right? There are magazines out there, not long scholarly research articles, but shorter informative articles that are aimed at a profession. And those are usually not peer-reviewed articles. So now when I limit to scholarly peer-reviewed academic, my numbers have gone down. So now I only have 97. In fact, my numbers went down dramatically. And depending on your terminology and what you're searching, your numbers may not have gone down so dramatically. I think mine did. Any ideas maybe why my numbers went down so dramatically? What that means is I have a lot of newspaper or magazine articles or books in my results. Yeah, that's kind of my guess. I mean, I'm guessing here, and doom scrolling, of course, is a very specific term, right? So there's not probably a lot of scholarly research showing up in the articles yet, which is fine. Okay, so that's my first filter. My second filter that I'm going to apply, and this is one that you can choose to turn on or off, is this filter, online full text. So many databases have the potential to tell you about content we cannot get to right now as an MTSU user. That can be good if you're researching something where not a lot has been done, or it's a small field, or maybe I need the best article ever about doom scrolling. Well, we don't subscribe to every journal. We don't buy every book or every film. If you run across something that we can't get our hands on right now, we can usually borrow it for you from another library. But sometimes my need is more immediate, or sometimes I don't need the best article ever and I want to focus on just things I can get to right now. And you can make that choice. Right now, for us to make things a little simpler, I'm going to make that choice and say, I only want to know about articles that I can get to right now. So my numbers are going to go down again, hopefully not a lot. Okay, they went down by 20. And so it should be now that in my search, so I've only got scholarly articles, every item will have a way for me to actually get to the item. And then one other filter that I might want to consider right now is, when were my items published? Under here, I have a couple of options. If I want articles published in the last 12 months or the past 5 or 10 years, well, what if I want articles published in the last 3 years or in the last month? All the rest of the filters are over here on the left. So if these date options don't match for me, if I go to all filters, they've opened up all my filters on the right. And this is going to become important in a minute, but there is published date. And my custom range, then I can choose, and I'm going to have to type or pick dates out of the little calendar, but I can choose the exact date range that I want. And then there are other filters down here that might be helpful. I'm going to leave those alone for now. And I'm going to pretend that I'm scrolling through here and taking a look at some things. If I see something that looks interesting, then I'm going to click into it and hopefully see a bit of a summary or an abstract. And I did this last night, and I actually saved some articles. I'm going to go over here on the left to saved. Those are the articles I actually saved. So actually, just pretend these are one of the articles that I already found, because I want to, before we move on, I want to make sure we all know how to work with an item. So I'm just going to pick one of these items that I saved yesterday. So once I click into it, then I might have a summary. Okay, so here's my abstract. What is this article about? And then they are already giving me some clues here that are going to be helpful in project 2. Anybody see any kind of information here? Assuming that I go ahead and keep working with this article. Anybody see some information here that might be helpful for me as I'm examining my article? Okay, yeah, subject terms, and then authors, and let's see here. I can do a few things with the authors. And even before I click into the article, then I also know, and you're not always going to get this for every item. Here are my authors. They all, apparently, when this article was published, worked in the Department of Psychology at this university. So I know they're psychologists, right? And then I've got subject terms. What is this article about? Sometimes I may have subject terms and keywords. And usually if you've got both, then the keywords are terms that the author has said. These are the terms, the keywords that apply to my article. And so I could use subject terms and keywords to kind of think about the big topic areas for my article, and then potentially as I go looking at other sources or as I take the references from the bottom of my article, I can watch for those same keywords or terms to show up. And then how do I actually get my article? It's access options. And for a minute, let me go back to my original results list, because you'll see things like access now PDF or view record in. Access options are a lot of them. And then if I open up access options, I might have a few different options. PDF is always a good choice. If you don't have anything that says PDF, then you're looking for something that says full text. So in this case, we're just going to pick one at the moment. It doesn't really matter for us which one. Then Access Now will open my article itself, perhaps in another database. So there is my article, there's my PDF. And then back here in Joule Search, the article that I clicked on was this one right here, I believe, beyond the scroll. One other thing I can do, if I click into the article back in Joule Search, I can get a formatted citation. So this is their best take on a citation for this article, according to MLA style. Or I can also save it. So in Joule Search, this little ribbon is the save. And because I have already logged in, then anything that I save will be saved over here in my saved items. And back in saved, you can make multiple folders if you want for different projects. And then if I was, for some reason, wanted to email to myself, it's this share button. And they will let me share either to a cloud account or to email the information about the article. And I'll get, with my email, I'll get a link that'll get me right back here. And then over here is my article and my PDF. And then depending on where I'm actually reading my article, here are a few other things that I can do right here. Again, I've got author information, and I think, let's just see, if I click that author, they're going to show me more articles by the same authors. So do I want to explore what else these authors have published on? So many of the databases will let me do that. I could do that for both of my authors. So a little bit about where they work. And then these are other articles that may or may not be on the same topic in this database. Here are my keywords that I mentioned. And then right here, so I'm now in the database Science Direct. If I scroll down, different databases work a little differently. But in this case, even before I open the PDF, if I wanted, I can read the article right here on the screen. And then This is the reference list or the works cited, same thing, it's just a different title for it. This is the reference list for this article. So who did my author cite? What research did they look at to write my article? And then I've got links to these articles. So if I want to follow up and look at one of the related articles, I could click View at Publisher to see that article that my original author cited. So back in Joule search, every article, I'm going to go one back to my results. So you asked, how did I actually get over here to this article in Science Direct and see the references at the end? Every article in my results list isn't really sitting right here in Joule search because Joule search is looking in multiple places, in multiple databases. And so in this case, for this article Beyond the Scroll, when I looked at Access Now, which is how I'm going to actually get to the whole article, then it opened this window in a brand new database, Science Direct. Here's my article. And because Science Direct handles things a little differently, what they have done for me, in addition to letting me download the PDF, is they have typed the article right in the database. So I can read the article right here. There's my introduction. Keep going. Current study. So what did they do in this study? And then if I keep going down here, they have the reference list or the works cited list. And they have typed out the entire reference list. And I've got hyperlinks. So in this case, and I just picked one at random, but I picked this one, maybe. And I clicked on this link right here, View at Publisher, and here is this article from 2022 that was cited in my article that was written in 2025. And now I've got this PDF right here. It's going to depend on where you find your original article. So it may be that an original article, the only option I have, so this is a different original article, maybe all I do is have a PDF. And when I look at the reference list for this article, I don't have any beautiful hyperlinks, right? So that becomes a little more difficult. But there are ways to get around that. Before we leave Joule search then, I want to show you one other filter that can be particularly useful, especially if you don't have an article yet. So I'm going to go back to my search list and I'm going to pick something, a little broader. Does anybody want to share your research question and we can look for something related to that? Is higher education necessary for career success? Okay. So I'm going to go to advanced search. And I'm already also thinking, are there synonyms for higher education? And Joule search actually is going to suggest some for me right here, right? College, university, post-secondary. If I want to get broader, I can say I'll take higher education or college or university, etc. And then career success. I'm going to hit search. I'm going to have to check whether it's going to keep my filters that I already had going. Okay, so it kept my scholarly peer-reviewed academic. It kept my online full text. Just for, I'm going to kind of be arbitrary here. I'm going to say I only want articles published in the last 5 years. So I still have 17,000 results. That's a lot, right? I'm not interested in 17,000 results. I'm pretty much always going to skim at least the first page, and I'm going to be reading titles and reading the beginning of my abstract here, see if anything jumps out at me. But then let me show you some other filters that may help you manage this list or figure out how to kind of narrow this. So the filters are built on all of the information about all of my results. So if I click on all filters, they open up on the right. So here's where I could turn on or off any of the filters that I've already applied. If I scroll down, here is a filter for subject. So we saw those subject terms that were applied to each item. If I open up subject, here are the subject terms that show up in my list. And there are at least 300 different subject terms. So this was all filters. I clicked on all filters, and then I opened up and scrolled down to subject. They can't fit all 300 of them here. So if I click this 293 more, here are those 300 subject items. And if I want to narrow in on one or more of these, then I can cut out some of my, however many, 17,000. I can look at this list frequency. So 3,000 items have the subject career development. 2,700 have occupational achievement. Or I can just look at them alphabetically. I'm just going to focus in on occupational achievement and higher education. So female. So there might also be one here about women. So if I wanted to focus just on a particular group, and then I'm going to click on update selections. And so when I finish, then I'm left with items apply that only have those, I didn't mean to click on that, but those subject headings. And in that case, I clicked on a subject by mistake, and it went out and found me everything in the database with that subject heading. So that's not exactly what I wanted to do. But that can be a way then to start narrowing to a smaller view of something. It was all filters, and now they're showing me what my filters are that are applied. And if I want to turn off the subject filters that I just did, then once I hit apply, I'll be back to my 17,000. But they do have another filter that can potentially be useful, and it is publication. And this, your mileage may vary on this, but everything in my list is a scholarly or peer-reviewed article. So I don't have magazines, I don't have newspapers, I don't have full-length books. So if I click publication, these are the journals that are supplying me my 17,000 items. So I was looking at, we're looking at college. Is college necessary for career success? Okay, so we're in the field of education. We might also be in the field of business or career development. So the most articles came to me from PLOS One. Who knows what the journal PLOS One is or publishes? How could we find out what the journal PLOS One is? Don't overthink that answer. Look it up, just Google it. So I could do the same thing that I did with subjects. Journal of Vocational Behavior. So I could potentially focus on just journals that cover higher education. And then I know that probably more or less the kind of the viewpoint, the discipline for those articles is going to be educators. Or I could go a different way, and I could potentially, and I might probably do this by reading alphabetically, look for business journals or HR journals, or if I wanted to kind of approach this from the business standpoint or the career standpoint. I see a lot of health medicine here. Now, this may not always work for us. I also see a lot of psychology articles here, but there's business history, business and professional communication. So this filter for publication can be another way to kind of manage and narrow this list. Okay. Questions, last questions about Joule search. Sometimes you're searching someplace else, either just Google itself or Google Scholar. However you're doing your searching, you get to something that looks good and it's paywalled. pay us $35, log in to download. Okay, so that goes back, to what do we have access to as an MTSU user. So there are ways for you to up your chances of getting to the article itself. Okay, so the first thing you need to do with Google Scholar is you go up to the settings, this hamburger menu at the upper left, and you go to settings, and you go to library links, and I've got a video that shows this. And you say, I am at Middle Tennessee State University. And then these links that say MTSU Library, that means we pay for that article. Now, some things in Google Scholar you'll just be able to get to because they're freely available to everybody, but other things you will not. And so this MTSU Library link, then it's going to take my citation from Google Scholar, and it's going to tell me all the places where I can get to that article. So if you use Google Scholar a lot, I suggest connecting to MTSU's subscription. The other thing you can do, this is kind of high level, but we have a couple of browser extensions that will also connect you to our subscriptions. It's an extension you add to Safari or Chrome or whatever browser you're using. And when you just are on the internet and you come across mostly articles, the browser then will let you check this same thing. It'll let you check MTSU. And then your fail-safe is, and here's the commercial, you ask us, okay? You've got my name and email address on the whiteboard. You are welcome to email me. Do not pay for an article without checking with us. Now, if it's 2 in the morning and you have to have that item, or, bad things are going to happen and you've got to have it by 9 a.m., I don't know, you might get lucky, but we might not be able to get back to you that soon. But otherwise, do not pay for an article, because if it turns out we can't get to it, as long as you've got a couple of days, we will get it for you. We go find a library that has it and they will email it to us. That applies for an article from a magazine, a newspaper, or a journal. That applies to a book, to a film. So the other thing you can do, if you've got something like that is paywalled, or here's another scenario, you've got the PDF of an article and you need to follow up on one of the articles in the reference list and pretend, let's just pretend, and a lot of this is freely available. Let's just take this article. Let's just pretend there's no hyperlink here. Then again, how do I find out if MTSU has it? So the other thing you can do is make a note of that citation wherever you found it, whether it's Google Scholar or just in the PDF of an article. And we could take the beginning of the article title, and I'm probably going to note who my author is, and I can go back to Joule search. I don't even necessarily need the whole article title. Now, in this case, I need to turn off some limits because I don't know, where that article is going to show up. I can look for that article title in Joule search. And if it doesn't show up, or if it only shows up, if I get a lot of results, then I could add my author's name. And this very often will work. Now, if nothing comes up in Joule search, that does not mean we absolutely don't have it, because everything we have access to is not in Joule search. So Liu was my author, and this is actually my title of my article. Let's see if that'll go any faster. Okay, no results. So I might have to try a couple of things, but then here's where I can also say, hey, library, I need help. Right here in Joule search over on the left, you have the chat box. So you can say, I need help getting the full text of this article. This is a real person. This is not a bot. Back on the library's website, here again is the chat box, this pop out over on the right, or up in the navigation menu, where you see Get Help, Ask Us. And at Get Help, Ask Us, over on the left, same chat box, text us or call us. The people answering chat are also texting, answering the telephone. If we are not online, it's going to it'll tell you we're not online, and it will give you a link to email us. Email us. Your question comes to 5 or 6 of us. If you emailed us right now, we are going to get back to you within a couple of hours, probably at the most. Back on the library's website, in the Joule search box, there are some links down at the bottom. And this link right here says research guides. These are pages that our librarians have put together to point you to databases and other information sources. And the research guides are organized a few ways, either by broad subject area, psychology, business, history, or by course. And there is an English 1020 research guide. So if I click on research guides, here is my broad subject list. I could also enter a search term. So I am not researching a topic here. I am finding a research guide that might give me places to search my topic or my research question. So right off the bat, we are all in English, right? So I could type English. I could also type education if I'm researching an education topic. I could also search popular culture, or you got to be kind of broad here, environment. So if I just type, in this case, 20, or I could scroll down to English, open up English, here's English 1020. And so what we have done is pull together some resources that are typically helpful for the kinds of writing you're doing in this class. So here's Joule Search. If you need a 1-minute quick overview of some of the stuff I just did in Joule Search, including those filters, we've got a 1-minute video. And then what I want to point out to you over here is evaluating sources. So on this page, we have some questions you can ask yourself when you're looking at an item, a source. You know, do I want to use this for my given need? And especially we talk about how to evaluate things you find on the internet, and some places to do some fact checking. But down here on the left, I have some resources about how to read an academic article. So if you feel intimidated or unsure of yourself reading a research article, an academic article like the things we're working with, I have given you some hints here. And it's a little different depending on if you're looking at a science article or an arts or humanities article. Who has ever, have you ever read like a chemistry or a biology or a medical research article? And they often have headings that we're told to look for within the article. Introduction or background, methods or methodology, results, analysis. That's often how a science article is organized. Well, we have scholarly articles in music, in English, in philosophy, and those authors are they're doing original research, but they're not in a lab. They're not necessarily surveying 1,000 people about their topic. They're doing source analysis. They're making connections, right, between a source and a question or a topic. And so down here, anatomy of an article, and I've got anatomy of a scholarly article for arts and humanities or the sciences. These are brief. These are actually just brief descriptions of how a scholarly article in the humanities is set up and what to look for as you are looking or examining an article. And then I've also got a couple of, not super long, but a couple of 2 or 3 page articles that talk about how can I approach this article. I'm not an expert in this field, but I need to try to understand this article. And there are a couple of methods that you can use. And so if you're feeling unsure of yourself, both of these 10 simple rules for reading a scientific paper, they talk about questions to ask yourself. They talk about things like go Google the keywords. If there's a word, a term in that source that you don't understand, go Google it. Or then also this other one at the top, how to read a scientific research paper.
I know they're at different stages of the process, but we kind of ended talking about the affinities phase where they are considering just the broader context of the author themselves as well, like who they're in conversation with. I know you showed us where their affiliations. And so I thought that was rather perfect too with at least where we are in terms of what we were discussing, like that conversation. So I just had a question too about maybe some reference chaining in a sense. I didn't know if that was something also accessible in Joule search.
Okay, yeah. So great question. Okay, and so that was, I admit, can you hang with me for another 6 minutes? Because we're just going to front load all of this, okay? And then I will follow up with an email. So we saw pieces of some of this ways of making connections, either like between my authors and the people they're citing, or my authors and the other articles that they've written. We saw some of that, and it's going to be context specific, where depending on where I end up with finding my full text. In some cases, then I've got options to see what else my authors have written. There is another database that can help us make connections if we're working with these scholarly articles. It is not as user-friendly as Joule search, so I'm just going to warn you. But this other database is called Scopus. And how do we get to a database? We get to a database back on the library's homepage using databases A to Z. And so Scopus is actually listed on the right under featured databases. I have to view all. It's right here. And Scopus is very good at making connections. And so what you can do, and this should hopefully work for all of us. Again, every scholarly article is not in Scopus, but we can find our article in Scopus and then use some of the tools that they give us to make some connections. And if I remember correctly, I should have done this before, I think we can even get kind of a network chart of authors. I'm going to cross my fingers. So first, I've got to find my article here in Scopus. And so let's just take, now I admit, the older the article is, the more connections there will be. So an article, so this is a little tricky. So an article from February of 2025, that was not that long ago in the world of research. And I'm not saying you can't use a new article. And we can try this. Let's just try this. So I'm going to take a little bit of my article title. Oh, I didn't pick an easily spelled author. And I want my first author's name. And in Scopus, I'm going to search for a bit of my article title. I don't even really need all of it. I should just be able to go with even beyond the scroll. I'm going to add a search field because I also want to search for one of my authors. I'm just trying to get to my item in Scopus. I lost my place. Okay. So here is my first author's last name. And I'm going to cross my fingers that I find my article. Okay. So that worked well for me. Okay. Beyond the scroll, this is my item. So I'm going to click into it. And a few things. I know, even though the whole article may not be typed here, okay, references. So a few things here. I've got to go to view PDF to get my whole article, but right here, they're going to at least show me the references. So again, these are the references at the bottom of this article. And so I could again, and I'm assuming now that I have skimmed or read my article, I can find references that seem to match up well with what I'm interested in this article, and then I can follow them. The other thing that I can do, and Ren can tell us if this is potentially helpful, is there is a way, and I hit my back button and now I'm back at my results and I've got to click my article title again. I can also see who came later in time and cited this article. So who's newer is writing potentially about the same things and cited my original article. And Scopus is one of the few places that we can get this. Now, my article was published in February of 2025. So Scopus is not going to know about 400 different authors that cited my article, but they have found 4 other articles in Scopus that are newer that have cited my article. And so I can then I can see those cited by. And I can see, and then here are these cited by. So these articles came even newer in time. And then I might have to research this a little bit. Impact, this gets I would not worry about this for affinity. This gets into the idea of which journals are influential in the field and which journals get used very often, and you kind of have to know all the metrics. But let's look at our authors, and let me see. I clicked on an author's name, and if I go to view full profile, here are all the articles in Scopus from this author. So I can see what else they have written. And here then is a little bit of this. So this chart is telling me a little bit more about how influential this particular author is. So there are 25 articles by this author in Scopus. And in total, those 25 articles have been cited by 148 people. And this author has written other items with 229 people. So this is some of this. Okay, so this author, and this is just in Scopus, but Scopus is pretty wide. They have written with 229 other unique people. And in Scopus, the person they've written the most with as a writing partner, a research partner, is this Hatun. So there are 5 articles that these 2 authors have co-written. And then by clicking on some links, I can find out, oh, I'm kind of interested where I'm going to look again and see where do both of these authors work. They might work together, but they might not. So that's a little bit about, for the affinity piece, making some connections. Topics. So one of the topics that this author writes about most often Now, a lot of one-offs. So I'm seeing a lot, though, about well-being, health. I'm seeing a lot about adolescence. But they've got 3 different items about dissociative disorders and trauma connections. So does that help a little bit with the affinity piece? Okay, so I know that was kind of complicated. What you need to remember at the moment is that was all in Scopus. And I started by just finding my article in Scopus. And this is another thing that a librarian can help you with. Not here on this English 1020 guide. I can come in and add it. I'm probably going to add it to evaluating sources, or I might actually, I can probably, I don't know that I can do it today, but I can actually add another tab here that says something. I'm not going to probably say affinity because I want it to be like, I didn't know really what we meant by affinity until I looked it up. I'm probably going to say something like author affiliation or something that's a little broader, but I can put a link to Scopus there and outline some of this. Okay, so I'll do that. I'll try to do that tonight. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so you've got some time to work, whether you want to look in Joule search, whether you just want to do a Google search, Google Scholar search, whether you've got an article and you want to go see what you can find in Scopus. I'm here to answer questions. Ren is here to answer questions. Okay.